today's job to start, the shed that's in the boxes in that shed, I need to set up just here in between this one and that one, and as far back as I can have it without it disappearing down the slope. So I'm going to move all this stuff, and that's to get all the stuff out from under the house so we can renovate under the house. Where you can see the tape measure there, that's about as far over as it will go, so I'll have a little bit of a walkway to still get into that shed. I'm just going to get all this stuff out of the way. So here we go. That's the start of today's job.
Okay, so I've got that area cleared out. You can see a couple of pegs. That's basically my 3x3 metre square.
There's some tree roots there which are sticking up, so I've got to cut all that out and dig those up and level out this pile of dirt and try and just level the area before I start putting paving down.
I've now got this area fairly levelled out. I've brought down some soil from where I dug it out, doing that excavation there. We had some old pipeline around, so I've got that running through there and down this corner as well, just because water will pool here, but I had to build this up so I can get it level.
And it's only temporary, it's not like it's going to be a permanent thing.
That's taken me about 2.5 hours just to get this all done. Now I just got to lay down some plastic, start putting some pavers down so that the moisture doesn't come up into the shed and ruin our stuff. Yeah, I'll get on with that.
Just got that finished. Once you put the pavers down, you can actually see how uneven the ground is. See the magpie? Magpie and a youngster. They come around into the yard whenever I do any digging, just to grab any grubs or worms or anything like that that are around. So they came over earlier and now they've come back just before I finished. So that's done. It's about 10 to 5. So the sun's going down in the yard here, but just not in the area. So tomorrow I'll come out. I'll erect the shed on top of there, and then put the plastic down on the inside, and I put them just up a little bit on the inside of the walls, kind of like I did in this room, and then put my MDF sheets I've got stacks of down so that there's like a clean floor that won't get torn like plastic if you go moving around. So that's tomorrow's job. Spent too much time mucking around this morning with Fitbit online because my Fitbit screen has decided to stuff up a bit. It's getting replaced under warranty. Anyway, I've come out, I've opened up my boxes of the shed parts, split them out into all their parts to make sure I've got stuff, set up a couple of sawhorses so I can start putting stuff together and hopefully get this shed assembled today. Gonna get on with it. The end of one very long day. Shed is up. So now we've got that shed there which I put up for building materials. This one, which is going to be for the stuff that's in the laundry so that we can renovate the laundry. And then the original shed and the shed I built before for storage. So this one and these one are temporary. They're just while we get the renovation done. We'll end up taking those down when we're done, and we can use them some other time wherever, next house, don't know. So we're left with basically a little courtyard for the dogs. Or the rest of the backyard down there somewhere. But I was determined to get this finished. Now all I've got to do is put plastic on top of the paving down inside and some of that MDF so that I've got a decent floor in there for storing our stuff on. 9:30 now. Just got to finish packing up. It's been an incredibly hectic week. It's now Thursday, and we had subject selection night on Tuesday night where all the parents came up of years 8 and 10 to pick their electives for the following year. So that was an extremely long day. Monday, I had year 12 for a double. Tuesday, I had them for a double. Wednesday, I had them for another period, as well as some lunches, recesses where they came in. And so things have happened and things have changed. This one that had the job with the multiple drawers, he got all his drawers glued up on the Monday. And then on the Tuesday, when he went to try and fit them, they were a little bit tight, and he actually got the runners stuck on this one. So he had to pull them all out, pull all his drawers apart, and we trimmed them all down a bit just to make it a little bit loose to fit. And now he needs to recut his joints to re-glue those up. So that was a little bit of a setback for him, but that won't take him that long, and then we can cut his fronts. The student doing the desk where the waterfall's going over the top, she's given it all a good sand, so it's just about ready to put finish on it, but she's doing thin strips to cover the plywood on the front, and she's cut miters on them so that it can be nice, and she's doing that on her little hutch piece as well. So that just needs to be glued on. This unit's lying on its back at the moment, but this was the big box entertainment unit, and he's cut out his holes in the front, and he's just using a router to trim those areas flush using some guides. The blanket box sitting here, these panels she cut and shaped. You can see the shapes are rounded over, so she's fit those to fit inside the recesses, and finally got them all to fit beautifully. And so now she's just giving them all a really good sand before installing them permanently, so that they don't have to worry about trying to sand as much once it's in there. You can see the clothing rack down there. She's got the pivot point marked in there, or installed. So you can see the little pivot hinges installed, so that will fold up almost flat, but it's now currently standing in almost the position it would be in when it's all set up. She's got her bottom shelf here where she's cut some biscuits in between each piece to give it an alignment, mainly, just to make sure that the tops are aligned, and the ends will just get trimmed. Once they're all glued together, there'll be a strip of timber underneath to help them lock onto the rails at the bottom of the unit. Big study desk. She's got all her drawers installed. Some are a little tight, but they pretty much work well with the soft close pushing in and out. She's got the soft close drawers, which is nice. This is one of her little units to just go up on top of that. She's got another one just there, I think that's going to be put, and we're going to put big false fronts on that to basically cover up the edge of the runners. And the river table, that student is due back from overseas Monday to hopefully finish that off. And all of these are due in just under a week from now, because they're due at 3 o'clock next Thursday. Another thing that happened this week, it's not really work related, but on my way into work on Tuesday morning, I saw a small rainbow lorikeet roll out from under a Range Rover that I was driving behind, and I swerved to miss it and just saw it lying on the road. And I went around the block, came back to check on it, and it was being attacked by crow at the time. And I pulled up next to it, got the crow away. There were some other birds that were basically trying to protect this lorikeet from the crow. Not really sure what birds they were. I think they looked like noisy miners, which tend to protect other birds. But I brought him in to work with me. I picked him up, and I thought he was a tame bird because he looked like he had his wings clipped, and he was very, very tame and very affectionate.
What are we going to do with you, little fella? You obviously belong to somebody. I've called wires.
Wait and see if somebody comes. Okay? Very tame. I called Wise and they agreed to have a volunteer come out to the school and pick him up for me. But that took most of the day, and so I spent morning in the staff room with him, and then when I came over to the class, the students saw him and he kind of bonded with me and wouldn't let me leave the room. He followed me to the staff room door and he ended up sitting on my shoulder and coming into the workshop. The kids thought he was cute. Anyway, Wise ended up coming along and collecting him, and when they were going to take him to a vet to be checked because he'd gone under a car. They also have organisations that will rehome injured birds and that sort of stuff. And like I said, I thought he was a pet because he was so tame. They contacted me the next day. Turned out he was a wild bird, and the reason he had no flight feathers was because he had a fatal feather and beak disease, which made his flight feathers fall out, his tail feathers fall out, and then it starts to attack their other feathers and eventually moves to their beak, and they stop being able to eat and fend for themselves. And it's very brutal and a very painful death. So he had to be euthanised. That kind of got me a little bit on the Wednesday. So, yeah, he was a cute little bird, and when my seniors asked how he was on the Wednesday, and I had to tell him that I've just been contacted, he's been euthanised, and we talked about why, and they were really upset because he was such a cute little bird that would look so tame, and they thought he was adorable sitting on my shoulder and that sort of thing. So probably another reason why I haven't done the videos until Thursday, because yeah, Monday was just busy. Tuesday I was busy with the bird and the students, and then Wednesday busy with the students and just didn't really think about it other than that. The construction students, the seniors who are working on the concrete slab, they've had to do a bit more work with the formwork because it bowed a little bit over the holidays, so they've had to basically pull it back. They should be ready to do the concrete pour in about a week's time. I think the ag teacher, who the slab is for, he's on leave at the moment. I think he's back next week, and I'll probably try and organise that. But I don't think we'll do the pour before these projects are done, because half the construction class are also this timber class, and they can't be spending time away from this. Anyway, just finished a Year 11 construction class. Here's the construction room. You'll notice stuff all still over the place, but I've got them twice today, so they're trying to finish off a couple of their things they've got to do for their first cluster. We did a bit of paperwork and then went back onto the prac for the ones who need to catch up. And because I've got them again period 3 and no class in here now, I just let them leave their stuff and they can come back and get straight back into work when they go. So this is just a small workshop. I'm not sure if I've showed it much before. It used to be our welding bay area with the old welding bays down the back. Nice big roller door when we used to have auto running as well. But now it's basically just a small construction workshop with the tools that you'd need just on a site. But the beautiful part of it is, even though it's a bit of a mess, is our compound area out here, which means we can work and leave stuff out and not have to pack up all the time or put up the cages all the time. And our little garden that the Year 7s and 8s are doing is just out there. So I'll show you, because those plants have sprouted up heaps since the last time I looked at them. So I'll show you that before I head back over to the staff room. So here's the garden bed at the moment. I think that's beets. I'll have to ask my staff. That's sprouted up really well since we last looked. Got some spinaches and some cilantro, I think. Some carrots. More cilantro. I think that's more spinaches. I'll really have to just go and ask the staff. I'm not the one who's been planning it with them, but it's looking really good. End of the week. The only student who came in the last couple of days was the girl who was doing this really big desk, she basically wanted to get this out of the clamps and a few more parts attached using pocket holes. It's now 4 days to go, and they're not nearly ready to be finished. Next week will be an incredibly hectic week, and I hope the students feel that too, because there is no extension on this. It's a due date for the whole state, 3 o'clock next Thursday. It's also electives time, Friday afternoon. Year 8 into 9 have been putting their elective forms into the box that I made up. This is outside the staff room. That's my finger. I just got to empty this box out before I leave for the end of the week. Put them away inside the staff room.
Another quick trailer load of scrap to go to the scrapyard on the way back from work, or way home from work. Old guttering and stuff.
Next weekend, and you can see the shed. Put some plastic over the top just to guarantee that it's weatherized or weatherproofed. And I might put another layer of paving inside just so that any water splashing down on the paving on the outside won't sort of run underneath, even though I'm going to put plastic in there as well. It's a little cold today. There's been an Antarctic cold snap that's blown across the south of Australia, and it's come all the way up here, and it's snowing up the top of the mountains, and about 4 towns up is where the snow seems to have stopped. So cold here, but not snowing. It was raining earlier, but just cold. Progress so far. Plastic all the way over, and just held down the side. Not that there was any water that came in here over the past week. Then again, we only really had rain last night, so I've thrown another layer of paving down because I have 2 different types of pavers. The top pavers are above the bottom edge of the shed. So that means that if any water does hit the wall of the shed and come down, it's not going to flow under here. I'm going to now put down a couple of layers of plastic and then the MDF, and that'll give me a smoother surface to basically put our stuff on. That also won't have moisture come up from the ground. I really made sure of that by having plastic. Did a soil base, then plastic, then paving, then paving. Now I'm going to do more plastic, then the MDF floor. So we won't have moisture come up underneath, and with the plastic over the top, we won't have moisture come in from the top. Welcome to the inside of the new shed. So I've got black concreting plastic down on top of those pavers, and then just these sheets of MDF that I had loads of. I've got 2 layers of them to try and just basically stable up the floor a bit. And each of these is like 600 by 1200, so 2 by 4, 2 foot by 4 feet. And I've just got them spread out and overlapping, so we've got a floor that it's not going to get torn like if I just left plastic. So now I can start bringing some stuff out here to try and get it out from under the house so we can renovate the house. Now, one thing is, under the house I also have my tools stored as well, and I want to get those out of there obviously, so they'll have to go into that shed. I need to replace the roof of that shed because you can see where the roof has basically come apart in several spots from when branches have dropped onto the roof of the shed. One actually came straight through once. So I think I'm going to basically do some sort of a frame in here so that I can have something to hang tools on the wall, but also so that I can have something a frame for putting the roof onto, just for a bit more strength. And find some other sheeting from somewhere.
Similar to that downstairs window I did a few weeks back, I need to replace this pane of glass, which is upstairs, as you can see by the ladder, and I've got to replace it because of this. It got cracked in a hailstorm a while back. So I've got to measure. The glass goes all the way to the edges of the frame. He goes up into the frame there, and down the bottom here I put this extra piece on to improve that slope, so the glass actually comes down to about here. I'm going to take my measurement at the bottom and up the top, because odds on it's not perfectly square or parallel. That's 761, 760, that's not bad. The timber might go in a little bit on the inside, so about 758 would be a safer bet. Now I know it goes about 10 mil up into the frame. This bit you can see here is a bit of beading that goes up against the glass, and I've got this little bit of space here. I'm going to replace it with double glazed like I did downstairs, so that'll take up that space. The beading on the side should be still fine. Just got to get that upper measurement right. So this little indent here, this overhang, that there is basically the top edge of the original windowsill. So you can see the extra slope I put on it so the water wouldn't pool on the top. But that spot there is where the glass comes down to. Okay, so that's how far up into the frame the glass goes. So basically the entirety of that bladed section of my doohickey. And the bladed section of my doohickey is around, it's just on 10 mil, 3/8 of an inch. So whatever the measurement is I take from the underside of that down to there, I can safely add between 5 and 10 mil. So I just cut away that silicone that was there. The old one was a bit rotted and rolled over now that I remember, so this is straight in. So that's where I'll take the measurement to. Let me just grab the tape. This is actually making it easier to see than trying to reach around the edge of the ladder. So it's 1200 and, is that 3? Yep, 1203 to the bottom of the bit of timber, so where the top of the other window ledge is. So I can safely add 10, so that means 1213. So if I say 1211, that's probably even safer, because you can't trim off a tiny bit of glass. And I don't want to be chiseling any further. So I think 1211 would be a safe number to allow me to push it up into the top of the frame and then sit it down on the bottom of the timber here. Monday is over. Class were frantic in our lesson in the afternoon, and they know that they've got to be fairly full on in the next couple of days. The Jarrah clothing rack, she got her shelf glued up. We'll trim that tomorrow, so that's the bottom shelf done, and she started marking out her top shelf. The big river table, lake table, whatever, he got his frame all glued up for the base, so that's that there. So that'll be ready to work with tomorrow. He started using the router sled that I made, and has basically gotten 2 of the bits trimmed down. We're going to go down to a maybe about 70 mil high in total, because his board, which I need to rip up tomorrow, his boards here, I'm basically going to try and just rip these in half, as close as half as I can. They're rough sawn on the outsides, so I'm going to get to use my sled again, so I can trim one side nice and clean, and then cut them both the same width for him, and that'll create the surrounding border of his table, which will then have a rebate cut into it or routed into it for glass. The
large cabinet with all the drawers. He had to recut all of his drawers today. They're ready to be glued tomorrow. The desk over here, she's spent some time today putting on her solid timber trim on the front, so that'll be ready to basically plane back and sand back tomorrow. The blanket box, 2 of the ply panels glued in. So all of this only happened in a 1 hour lesson in the afternoon because they were all in class during the day. The student doing this box is still basically flush trimming all of his pieces, or all of his holes in the front before he can attach it. The student with the large desk was actually absent today. Tomorrow I only have 1 class, and I've told them I'm available for every other period, recess and lunch, and some of them do have a couple of periods where they're not on during the day, so they're going to try and come up and get as much as we can done. And I've also organised with the principal to have them out of class on the due date, which is Thursday. I might not be available with them, but at least they can work on their folios and do finishing touches and finish and all that sort of stuff on it. I think it's going to be a very stressful 3 days from here. There's still some stuff that's got to be bought from the hardware stores and things like that. I'll check on how they are tomorrow. Tuesday. Today was one of the first really hectic days because of this final week. The student who's doing the pond table, here's his pond table. He got all these machined down with the router sled. We just wanted to get it low enough so that he had kind of his islands. Didn't want to go too much further. This one was going to end up taking it down too much further, but this was a happy medium. We got his sides all milled up using the jointing sled that I made. That made it really easy to do that. Jointed one side and then cut it through to the largest size that I could get for the hole out of the pieces. So he's got 95mm high sides, so it's nice and chunky looking to go with the legs. These are domino joints in the corners and dominoed to the base as well, so that's all basically in and gluing. And we got the router in, so I just took a cut out of the corners so that I could take a measurement from width and length so that I can go and order his glass, because there's going to be glass on top of this. I'm going to be going to the hardware store after work here to buy the decorative stones that he wants to put into there. I've already got the white sand, and I've got to buy finish for all of them. Finishing will be happening on Thursday. Here's his base. So it's nice and sturdy. That's going to sit on top. Blanket box. All the side panels are in, so that's looking good. Pieces cut for the bracing at the base to bottom to hold up the base. The top got milled and glued up today in the morning with some domino joints. Once they were set, routed out this piece, got the plywood set, and that's basically been glued in. This one's continued to get routed out. He's only got a couple of pieces left to basically clean up. The desk over here got her edging glued onto the front of the desk as well. The hutch part has been done. It's ready to go. A little bit of sanding and ready for finish. Unfortunately, the student who was doing the big chest of drawers, he was busy today and didn't have time off to be able to come up here. The big desk that's being made, she's finished putting together her top hutch, and we got drawer fronts cut so that there's a continuous grain going down the front. This is the 2 drawers, and then the 3 drawer fronts. 3 drawer fronts with a continuous grain going, that's going to go straight down the front. She just needs to buy her drawer handles. The one doing the clothing rack I didn't see today, but her stuff is out of the clamp set, needs a bit of a sand. I'll be buying the hanging rack for in the middle. She's still going to make her top shelf. It's all marked out, but it just needs to be cut and biscuit joints cut and glued. Tomorrow I have them for a double, and period 1 I don't have class, so they can try and come in here. Period 5 I don't have class, so they can try and come in here if they don't have class. Recess and lunch. My double is actually before and after recess, so that should be a good 2.5 hour lesson with them. And Thursday we got permission for them to be off class for the whole day to get ready. That should basically be applying finish and just getting a water-based finish so it'll dry quick. It's going to be sprayed so they can get multiple coats, and finishing up the folio. And then it's all over. So, scene of mild chaos. Head around this way too. Projects all over the place. Chest drawers project. Had to redo, as I said, I had to redo all of his drawers. The one benefit was that we were able to get grooves cut into the bottom of his pieces, which he hadn't done beforehand. And he's got his ply bases cut to be fit in. They'll need a little bit more trimming. Entertainment unit with the cubby hole type front. That's now attached. He finished shaping up all his front and got that on there. The wave top desk has been getting sanded and sanded and sanded, so that's going to have a nice preparation for it. Toy box, got the base into it. The base is just sitting on some cleats in the bottom. The lid is down here with some pneumatic stays and piano hinge, putting it on tomorrow. The clothing rack is disassembled for good sanding to get all of the pencil marks off, ready for finish. The dowel has its holes for the clothes hanging. These small strips here are to go underneath the shelf so they can basically hook onto the rails. This is little one here is the top shelf, bottom shelf underneath that's been sanded, so they'll get glued on first thing in the morning, sanded, then reassembled. The island table has had its base attached. Just used some table clips to attach the base to the underside of the top. He got all of the routing done around the top edge for the glass. I ordered the glass this morning and we'll be collecting that tomorrow morning on the way into work. This desk here has been getting all of its sanding ready. Fronts still need to be attached, and she's picking up her drawer handles today or tonight so they can be put on in the morning. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 projects due in less than 24 hours. Like I said, the boss has given them permission to be out of class all day tomorrow, so they'll be in here in the morning doing all this final little part, and then we'll move it down to the other end of the school for finishing up. That's where they'll have to be stored until marking, and we've got a computer room down that end so they can do all the final touches to their folio all before 3. It's D-Day for the student projects. In a little over 7 hours, they have to hand in their projects at whatever stage they're in, finished, unfinished, and with a folio documenting the process as well. So that's what most of today is, tidying up, printing, getting all that sort of stuff, as well as getting the projects finished up as much as they can. The island table glass I ordered yesterday, and I've ordered it from the glaziers up the mountain, and that I order my window glass through because I can count on them to do a good job in a short amount of time. But I've got to go a couple of towns up. They open in about 5 minutes. I'll collect the glass, put it in the back, then get back down to work, and then spend the day with the students doing as much as we possibly can within the constraints of gluing and time, and because there's still a couple that are gluing things. Everything else that's just mechanically being fitted is not a big deal. For the most part, a lot of them just need to sand so that their finish can be applied. So I grabbed a couple of my spray guns just as a backup in case the ones work muck up, kind of like a fail-safe, because there is no time to waste. It's like there's a deadline. Some of my students actually messaged me in Google Classroom last night, or one messaged me and said, can we hand in the folio at 11:59 p.m. tomorrow? And another one said, oh yeah, can we do that? And I just had to say, absolutely not. Folios are due at the same time as the projects, 3 p.m. on the dot. It's a tough line, but it's got to be fair across the whole state. Glasses in the back, double check the measurements just in case, but knowing how well they did with my window, I knew it was going to be right. And the measurements are spot on. Now I've just got an hour's drive to work, so I'll get there just before our class time starts for the kids to get into the workshop. It has been one very long day. From the point I got to work, I was basically just in the workshop, then back and forth between the workshop and the trade school, and running around. Didn't stop for recess, didn't stop for lunch, just kept going. We got all the students through in the very end. 7 students, 7 finished projects. I say finished because one had to change his design a bit to get it completed because he was having trouble with the drawers. That was the one with the big drawer units. 7 folios. That's the best bit, that they all had a folio of some sort, and that's in part with the work that we do throughout the year, although after all of the work at the start, it's basically on them to work on it, and they, like a lot of students, they keep forgetting that and they just concentrate on the prac. But they're all done. They were done and finished by 3. Panic stations towards the end. The workshop and the computer room look like an absolute bomb site because there's just tools everywhere, there's dust everywhere, scraps everywhere, and the computer room just has boxes and plastic sleeves and everything just sort of lying, and extra bits of paper just all over the place. And we had our school conference straight after it. Thankfully my faculty helped me out, they always do, helping out the students, jumping in on the workshop if they needed assistance, helping out getting stuff printed out. And it wasn't till the very end of the day that my backside hit a seat. And then off to the conference, which was another 4 and a bit hours after work. I'm almost back to the house and I'm absolutely knackered, absolutely stuffed. Tomorrow morning, even though I don't have the students, I'll be asking for the ones that I can to clean up that workshop and pack it up. Another year of major projects done. 60% of their HSC grade for timber is finished. It's still got to be marked. Markers come in 2 weeks' time. No, little less than 2 weeks' time. Then they've just got to do the written exam at the end of the year. We're going to encourage, and some have already said they'll do it, encouraging the Year 12s to talk with the Year 11 class and just press home how important early planning is, keeping on top of the portfolio, keeping on top of the project. One said, order your timber early. Hopefully the Year 11s will take that information on from the Year 12s more than they might do from us, because we say the same thing every year. I hope I sleep well tonight. I reckon I will. Friday morning, and this is the carnage that is the workshop after a nutty day of trying to get everything done. Tools just laying around, toolboxes, like all this sort of stuff. Look, because of the strict deadline, everything just gets dropped from here and run down to get spraying done and finalising folios, and they just never make it back here, especially too that we had the school conference last night, which was straight after work. So we can see that you can see 2 drawers there. The job that had the 6 drawers, 1 broke, 1 didn't fit. So we modified his design at the last minute. But there's just so much stuff. His glue bottles lying around, clamps are everywhere. There's just tools everywhere. And I actually don't have the class today. I've spoken to some people and we're going to try and get them in here to clean up this morning, put the tools away. And the computer room's just as much of a disaster. Actually, no. Computer room's got mess in it, but it's not like this. Anyway, going to roll. End of another week. Year 12 came in, cleaned up, put all the tools away. And now what you can see around here is the Year 11 projects, one of my other staff has. And they've done the same thing. In Year 11 we get them to do a project where they have to design something themselves and go through the folio process and build. And we try and keep them to the same sort of a standard. As there's a deadline, it's got to be met. Because of what happens in Year 12, there's a deadline and there's no extension. Now these guys have already had an extension, and this happens every year just because of things that happen around the school. You feel bad for the kids, let's give them a bit more time, And so these guys have gone through, you can see the varying states of completion. So there's one that looks like it was almost there. That one is really close. Some of the ones that seem to be incomplete are the ones that the kids seem to put a lot of work into their design. And then there's some others that maybe just they might not have been attending all the time, and so their projects are just sort of lying around. But we actually had both classes together almost today, and so some of mine were actually saying to the Year 11s who were here, don't waste your time, make sure you get your timber early, get your design all figured out, work on your folio the whole time. So there's all that sort of stuff that they were telling each other. And we're going to try and do that more formally so that the whole class of both classes can be there to try and share that information. It's now, I said, it's the end of the day, Friday. I've just got to go and empty out the elective boxes so they're not just left stuffed full of paper for the weekend. Year 8 electives into 9 are closed, and Year 10 into electives closed, or will be closed as soon as I walk back into the staff room. But there's all the elective papers in there. I'll get those out, put them in the folder. That's kind of like the backup.